real life. So without much introduction, it's myself and Fatma again. We're going to be discussing different topics. I think a better topic to discuss is about morality, humanity, being humane, and that if it's subjective or objective. So hi Fatma, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh,
So,
always.
yeah, we had a chat earlier, and it was about we normally have had talks about morality, whether it was subjective or objective, and I think the consensus is that it is subjective. So it's always been a difficult concept to wrap people's minds around, and people seem to think automatically that it leads to nihilism. What do you how do you break it down? I would just want to ask you, how do you break it down that morality is subjective?
Oh, here's the thing, like first of all, so we need to differentiate between subjectivity and objectivity. Objective is something which is not based on how you personally feel. It remains to be true regardless of what a person or an individual or a group of people feel like or have an opinion about that particular thing. Subjectivity means something which is which conforms to subjectivity of an individual, of a group of people, basically conscious minds. You know, for example, 1 + 1 is equals to 2 is an objective fact. It relates to the law of identity, on which I'll make this bold assertion that laws of physics are based. Not just based, but they presume the law of identity to be true. Whereas me liking the color blue is something subjective, or me having values where you shouldn't kill babies, or it's wrong to kill babies, or it's bad to kill babies. That would be also a subjective thing, no matter how obvious it might be.
So what does it mean then? What are the consequences of thinking that something is morally, let's say if, to kill babies is right or wrong, it is all subjective, then what's to say that your value is greater than somebody else's value?
Well, according to me, my value is greater than somebody else's value, and a lot of people would seem to agree that their value comes before other people. Some of them might not. Some of them are just too nice, where they put other people's values and other people's well-being before themselves, and that's totally all right, because now we have some other people who put their values and their well-being first before other people's values or well-being.
So basically, what if let's try to project ourselves and create an imaginary future where people, there is a consensus growing in people saying that, yeah, we should, if there's a baby, then we should basically kill the babies that are born now, just to keep the population down so that it doesn't strain on the resources, and we can help our environment out that way as well. If there's more people who are voicing such an opinion, would that mean they are right?
They are right according to which goal? Like, if you're talking about the goal they want to achieve, if they have a very good reason that this killing babies, for example, will achieve this goal, and they can actually demonstrate to be the fact, that they are right. But right doesn't always mean morally good or bad.
Well, if they're saying it is morally good, it's after all, it's subjective.
Oh yes, if it is morally good according to them, if they're making this claim that killing babies will lead to the ultimate good, and this is how they justify their moral stance, then I'm pretty sure there could be another person who would come and object it. So if they are saying that they're morally good to do this certain thing, another person says, or another group of people, they say that no, well, it's bad. No matter what the outcomes are, we should still thrive and look for other options, like other than killing babies, and they would be morally good according to their morality or according to they themselves. Now, because there is no, there can be no anchor where you can hook your moral grounding to, for example, until and unless you, first of all, you don't have a base where everyone agrees with, by which everyone agrees, or you don't have a similar goal.
So what is objectively, I mean, what is morally good or bad, right and wrong, is all depending on how many people believe it?
No, not really. Right or wrong, right and wrong is something different than morally good or bad.
No, it's the same thing. Morality means right and wrong, good or bad.
Well, not really. I can give you an example. Suppose there's a person dying. He was stabbed in his chest, and another person who would be morally right, morally good, even according to me, myself, and probably you, where his end goal is to save that person or minimize the chances of the stabbed person dying. So that would mean if we all share the same values, which I do and a lot of people do, we would say that, yeah, this guy is morally good. But in order to do so, he sticks out the knife. That would be wrong in terms of achieving the goal, because once you stick out the knife, no matter what your intentions are, the chances of that person dying would increase instead of decreasing. So according to the goal that is to be achieved, he is morally good, but he is doing it wrong. And it's kind of relative to the goals that we want to achieve, or at least the things that we, what our base is, if we agree upon a certain starting points or not.
Okay. So we then touched upon the topics of what is humane and what is not humane. So as a way to distinguish ourselves apart from morality, because morality has always traditionally had these arguments about subjectivity and objectivity, that is something objectively moral or not, and most philosophers come to the conclusion that morality is subjective. If you rationally, rationalize the whole thing, then that is the rational conclusion. So a way that I've usually tried to go around it to address questions like, is torture bad? For instance, stoning someone to death or crucifying somebody. Is that, instead of saying, is this bad or is this wrong? You can ask, is this inhumane? And the definition of humane is what is compassionate or merciful. And those are the words used in the Quran, pretty much the most frequently used words when, because in the beginning of every surah, it starts with that. It's sometimes within a certain surah as well that God is most merciful, most compassionate. And yet you have these, you have torture that's prescribed. And in some cases, rape is prescribed. Those are real, arbitrarily unnecessary things. So it's not so much like, for instance, you can make a case like, what if I were to take a tube and then punk, stick it in someone's throat. It would sound as though that's a bad thing, but that's one of the ways that you can get someone to breathe. So when their lungs are all filling up, and that's if you stick a tube in the throat, then that's one of the few ways a person is able to, I mean, that you can save somebody's life in that way.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not really, it's a lot more cut and dry, because torture is pretty much, it's not necessary at all to torture somebody. There's no evidence that if you torture somebody, you can get the truth out of them.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's actually the other way, that, you know, for instance, witches were tortured, and they would just, you know, a few minutes into it, they would say, yes, I'm a witch, just to make the torturer stop.
Yes, yes. Oh, and I absolutely agree with you. A lot of false confessions are made by this kind of this torture involving physical violence. However, to talk a little bit about the humane thing that you said, Fatma, let me just start talking a little bit about morality itself, which just to add a few things. So morality is, like we discussed, is subjective because it's not based on it's not based on axiomatic truths or a priori truths, but it's actually subject to one's opinions. And it may sound a bit weird that, hey, opinions change all the time, but it's not just that, but morality has it presumes a lot of similar what do you say, similar grounds, same grounds where different people could agree upon, as well as they have certain goals in mind. So when you talk about a humanity or humane thing, humane has a very clear kind of a goal over here. The goal of being humane is to minimize suffering and torture and pain when it comes to human beings. And keeping that goal in mind, of course, it becomes right or wrong to do right things or wrong things when it comes to being humane. And as for you brushed up a little bit of theistic theistic knowledge and theistic information over here. Well, I really do not believe that Islam is humane at all. It doesn't share those goals which the term humane, or people having the values who agree with humane being the thing to do, or the good thing. It doesn't share those values. The Quran doesn't, Islam itself doesn't. But do you agree that humane has certain goals in mind when you talk about being humane, the term itself?
The term itself, I think it's it is evolving, or it can evolve. There is scope for change in it, to refine it more and more, because one of the things is we've talked about is veganism, that what we think is okay today, that you know, maybe, I don't know, 200 years in the future, people will be looking back, thinking we're inhumane to
I'm
kill
sorry. No.
animals.
It's not inhuman, because inhumane, I think you would agree, it only involves human beings. Morality is a different topic which encompasses everything. Humane is just about humans.
I think humane is about all. You know, people say that this is not a humane way to treat animals.
Oh, yeah, what they mean is like, this is not a good quote unquote human being would treat animals like. Maybe, yeah, maybe you have something there, Fatma, but that would, don't you think that if we encompass humane, like a humane way of killing or humane way of treating animals, if we do that, then humane, the word humane itself is presupposing an ought. Ought is like should, or ought is something prescriptive, like how you should behave. And when I ask you, and
Yeah.
when you say how you should behave, what are you basing this ought Two, what are you basing it on? Other than your own subjective values?
Yeah, which is basically don't harm another creature. But I think it's
Well, don't harm means like you shouldn't harm another creature, would be
yeah,
more
shouldn't
accurate.
harm. Yeah. But let's say if we just make it about science, that then it's basically an intra-species thing, that we try to preserve our own species. And that is how human beings have thrived so
But
far,
that's
that we've
descriptive, Fatma. That's not prescriptive. Like science tells us this is how things are, not this is how things should be.
um but yeah, this is how things are in their ideal state, and this is why we as a species have thrived, because we help each other.
Mm-hmm.
We are a social species that have I mean, in any situation, if you look at say a tribal societies are small societies that will war war with other tribes all the time in order to keep its smaller tribe uh, you know um, cohesive. And the higher up you, the more social you become, and let's say those tribes join together, they form, eventually they'll form a civilization. So where
Yep.
you have many tribes. So you see, go into any city, for instance, even 1,000 years back, if you go to any large city, like if you went to Constantinople,
Mm.
back in the Middle Ages, it would be a multi-ethnic, multi-cultural society. You'll have a Jewish place, that you'll have Jews living there, you'll have Muslims living there, you'll have people from China living. So all kinds of people coming together, bringing their expertise together, and cooperating in a way that brings about overall well-being for everybody else, for
Yes.
for most people there. And whereas the more you look at only your individual well-being, then that society becomes more atomized, more and more, until you're not able to really look after your own. Which is why one of the things that when people say that, oh, they come up with conspiracy theories, that doomsday type of conspiracy
Mm.
theories, that um when there's a doomsday that happens, and the elites are orchestrating it, because then they can live underground and they
Mm.
cannot live by themselves. But you cannot have a proper life. They will never have the life that they have now,
Yeah.
because if you want to wear anything, like if you want to buy Prada shoes, those Prada shoes are made out
Made
of
by
leather and this and that,
they're
and
made by
each of those
peasants.
yeah, but and each of those components is dependent on a whole bunch of other people to make those then they are shipped to put them on a ship. Each of those shipping components are built by more people, and then those
Yes.
ships are then driven by or
Yeah,
people, and then
that's called societies. That's how
that's called
societies
society. This
function.
is
But here's
exactly, it's
there's
such a
one thing you said.
complex.
There's one thing you said, Fatma, which I kind of have a kind of like a problem with. So you said individualistic societies, like not individualistic in that sense, but if a person cares about their well-being only, even that might entail you have to be careful about the well-being of other people in the society. So in even if the goal, so hear me out, even if the goal is to cater for your own well-being, even if that is the goal, it you have to take care, or you have to be willing to take care about the well-being of the other people around you or the society you live in, because if you do not, it will come around and bite you, uh, and your well-being is gonna get jeopardized. So if you
Of
want to,
course, yeah.
so it's kind of like in morality. I also see morality as something like this: you have a set of goals that you want to achieve, and you have the baseline, like the basic facts, not facts, but basic opinions or basic values that you share with the people you live around, the people around you or in a society. But again, my question still stands here, Fatma. Science is, it doesn't tell you about what's morally good or what's morally bad. Yeah, we can draw those conclusions based on our own values. Let's take global warming, for example. What science says, well, these are the results and this is what's happening. Science also says that, okay, in order to stop global warming, we need to do this. Now, what science says, in order to stop global warming, it's assuming personal values of people, including the scientists themselves, and assumes that everyone wants to live longer. Everyone wants to preserve the natural resources of the planet. Everyone wants the earth not to get drenched into, not to get destroyed by global warming. And only then, only after keeping in mind the subjective personal values of the populace, they produce prescriptive stuff. Like, if you want to stop this because of your values, you need to do this to stop global warming, for example. But pure science is not exactly prescriptive, it's descriptive.
Yes, it would be a scary thing, I think, if it was prescriptive.
Oh
For
yes,
instance,
that would be religion.
you know, if yeah, and even so, let's say global warming. That if you look at global warming, the most natural prescriptive solution would be to, you know, do a genocide basically on people, so that human
Yes.
beings consume less, and there would be less pressure on the atmosphere
Yes.
and less pollution and so on.
Why aren't we doing it? I think, and I'll ask you, what do you think? I think we are not doing it because of our own set of values that we share among everyone, which are, again, because of our values, and despite of having the masses sharing those values with us, it's still subjective. So this is the reason why we do some things and we do not do some things. Like we
Okay,
believe
I
we
wanted
should be
to
doing something and should not be.
bring something up about
Yes.
considering this, that how about where society is taking us now? And I think some atheists are rightfully afraid of this when it comes to the issue of morality being subjective. So right now you have like a wokeist movement where there are certain people who are trying to normalize pedophilia by saying and by calling pedophiles minor attracted persons, and saying, well, they shouldn't be stigmatized, or you know, love is love. If you have this idea of love is love, then you know, naturally that means that everyone's love is legitimized. And if you're calling it love, you know, that these base grown men are quote unquote in love with these minors. And because they've groomed these minors, the minors are sometimes coming out with these men and saying, yeah, sure, I'm in love with this old man, you know. And it's making it's basically normalizing pedophilia and grooming. And but they're rationally coming to some kind of you know, idea that, well, this is okay because love is love, and therefore that's right.
Yes. So the problem here is, and I'm going to be contradicting myself even here, because I just we both just agree that morality, for example, is subjective. However, it has objective implications. For example, if you're going to be grooming these kids, it's objectively going to be jeopardizing the well-being of any given society, right? It could be it's objective, and you can actually see the changes. You can see it in the data and the graphs. For example, a society where pedophilia is illegal and a society where pedophilia is actually rampant and totally legal, it will have consequences, and those consequences are objective. They're not subjective. They will be jeopardizing these things. But again, going back to, so here's the thing, you can rationalize things that, okay, fine, if we legalize it versus if we don't legalize it, what's going to happen? If you don't legalize this, legalize this, these are the consequences, which are some pedophiles are going to be hopeless and they're going to be sad, right? But if you're going to legalize it, the consequences are severe. A lot of kids, they'll have a lot of complications growing up. That is, if they don't die because of penetration and that kind of stuff, or like having massive infections, which treated or untreated are extremely devastating when it comes to little children. And not only that, their mental well-being is not going to be as stable. Now, again, I wish I had prepared for this, but I'm pretty sure there are studies out there how underage having sexual relations with a child can demoralize them or have an effect on their brains. We can actually rationalize these things. We can use good reasoning towards these things. And now the question would be that, well, we just agreed that morality itself is subjective. It's not objective. We cannot objectively verify or give it an anchor. Well, here's the thing. Even having said all that I just did, that it is objectively the case, the thing is, it is only objectively the case if your values are with the well-being of a society. But if your value, so at the end of the day, the well-being of a society is a subjective value, is a value which is, it is something that we human beings, a lot of them, we value, but the universe wouldn't give two about it. It doesn't care if the society prospers or not. The earth, the planet earth, or the non-living things, or even a lot of living animals, they wouldn't give it wouldn't bother them. It wouldn't affect them at all. At the end of the day, it is subjective. However, having certain end goals, we can rationalize these things. And this is the main reason. First of all, the truth, an undeniable truth, if we are not hard solipsists, is that we human beings have certain values. The other truth is most of us, majority of us, we value our well-being, and in turn, we have to value the well-being of a society. So keeping these goals in mind, even though if morality is subjective, we can draw out these woke people and use rationality, logic, common sense, and basically start with a starting baseline point. We can agree, if they agree with us that, okay, fine, let's set out the basic principles here. Do you agree that well-being should be preserved of any given society? If they say yes, then we can reason through. And if they say no, then, well, there is no argument to be had. But here's a very interesting question. What if, which you actually asked, and then everyone in a society, they have a value, they don't value the well-being of the society or even themselves. What happens then? So I think, how about we continue this question, and I will be asking you this question, and then maybe I can comment later, right after a little break. Recording is in progress. Say that again. Morality is subjective.
Morality is subjective, but we should pretend as though it is objective.
Yes. Yes.
And that's the conclusion that a lot of people,
we should like, pretend as though it is objective. Well, yeah.
That's that is
I
the
don't
best
think you
way.
even need to pretend anything to be objective once you realize that once you realize that your goals are aligned with the goals of other people, and the reason behind the
What if they're
you
not?
having, well, then
Sometimes
you're an evolutionary anomaly, I would say.
no, that's not right at all. I mean, I mean, that's my subjective view, and a lot of um, a
Hmm.
change in society came from actually the minorities. And for instance, in ancient Greece, the majority of people have always been highly misogynistic or petty-minded and so on. And it was only the minority who were actually very knowledgeable, philosophical, and they thought deeper and they thought bigger, and they thought that they had larger minds to be able to think more universally rather than more
Well,
just, it's all about my selfish needs. I'm gonna just go to work. And a lot of people, is I think necessity dictates that they
oh,
become
no,
selfish
actually,
about life.
what does is, Fatma, it's the baselines. If you share the common baseline, then you can have arguments and build your way through using rationality itself. For example, both the misogynistic people and the people who were not misogynistic, they had the common theme going on: preservation of well-being, right? And then they can build upon it. Once I would say, well, the thing is, yeah, we can preserve, but we have to preserve only our well-being or the well-being of men, and women are just slaves. And the rational person might have said something like, well, in order to for you to become to be well off in terms of well-being, you need to like get women into an equal footwork. So there more people in combination. There's double the amount of people, in men and women both, working for the betterment of the society. In turn, uh, like affecting your well-being in a positive way. So this is the thing. Again, you don't need
But
like
morality again is derived from whatever, like you said, it's subjective.
it is
So
subjective,
they
yes.
might not think, they might not be thinking in that way. They might be thinking, for instance, like back in those days, just as you have today, you have people who are saying, well, it's God who is has the moral authority to decide what is moral or not. And
Hmm.
most gods are misogynistic, including the Greek gods, who a lot of them were rapists. Even like Zeus was a serial rapist. And
Wow.
so like, so you have you know you've always had misogyny, but people will justify it by saying, well, gods, we are small-minded people, and God has a transcendent great mind. What is good for us is we can't see that. Only God can see what is good for us, because he has
Hmm.
the larger view, and we don't really know. So
So
and
my
God
question,
tells us
yeah.
that we should be misogynistic, or that women
Hmm.
should have these particular roles, and a part that we can't see. It's a lot of Sufi saints talk about this, like
Hmm.
an ant who goes through a Persian carpet will never be able to see its beautiful design.
Hmm.
And so that's kind of how a
They
lot of people,
rationalized it. Yeah, it's
yeah,
not actually
justifies this.
rationalizing. It's kind of like justifying. It's a very flawed way of thinking. But here's the thing, Fatma. Look where it got them. So if you start off with bad ideas, despite of having certain goals, for example, your goal
But you
is
can say
A,
that, like,
and you
yeah,
think and you believe, hear me out, and you believe that doing X, Y, and Z, you will achieve the goal A. But when it's scrutinized over like over good reason and logic, under good reason and logic, you come to the conclusion that in order to achieve the goal A, XYZ is not the most efficient or effective way. In fact, it might be uh, B, C, and D in order to achieve the goal A. And this is why we have discussions. This is why we had philosophers, and this is why there was always arguments for and against God. And guess what happened? Uh, Today, the societies which are secular, they don't base their morality and laws on religion, but good reason. Those societies today prosper better. They prosper more than the societies which do depend on religion.
But that's a qualitative sort of analysis. Like that's not
Hmm.
really. For instance, a lot of Muslims might point to Western societies, point to, just like we talked about those maps, the minor attracted persons or people who are, there's more drug addiction going on, there's a lot more vice, and they look at
Hmm.
the kind of massive amount of porn in the society and
Hmm.
prostitution and this and all. It's, they'll look at the West and think that it's degenerate, and they'll say, look at what lack of religion has bought those people.
Well, again, so here's the point which I'm trying to make, Fatma. Here's the thing: argue through, reason through things, provide good reason, provide good justifications, and have this arena of competing. I not just competing, not competing ideologies in terms of violence or anything, but in terms of intellect and good reason. And at the end of the day, it just boils down to what goals you have and what are the best ways to achieve those goals. Again,
Well, what if somebody's goal is just to go to heaven, like an Islamic heaven, and
what's
they're
the underlying factor
they're
behind
just,
heaven? I think it's maximization of well-being,
yeah,
right?
well, that is their goal, the maximization of their well-being, which is
So
they're going to get in the hereafter, not in this life. And that's why they shouldn't sin, and that's why they should, you know, and they don't think that well-being in this world means anything.
So here's the thing, their goal is maximization of well-being, and to achieve that goal they need to go to heaven, and to go to heaven there are similar other micro goals or like other pathways to do that, and the main goal is maximization of well-being. Now the question would be, they would say they want to go to heaven, but the actual goal over here is the maximization of well-being. You can question, well, are you sure that the main pathway to well-being is heaven? Well, how do you know that? How do you know heaven is true? You see, you can rationalize, you can have a rational discussion regarding the subject matter. And then you can
Um,
conclude if their pathway towards maximization of well-being, which is going to heaven by being Islamic, is rationally justified or not.
yeah, there's that as well. That's true.
Yeah, I think I'm ready for Hamza Qureshi. Bring him, man. Bring him here.
Are you still recording this?
Nah, I'll probably cut this part. Oh,
Okay.
it was going so amazing. Cutting and splicing and shit. It's kind of like not a big fan of it,
Oh,
but I'll splice this part out. Or maybe not. You know what? Fuck it. Here's the thing. I'm pretty sure you're listening it, and trust me, you kind of inspired me to do this podcast today, because I love talking to you, and I'm not gonna say that you're wrong and I'm right, but I respect you a lot, and hopefully we would be able to have a discussion, a similar discussion on Zoom, just like myself and Fatma here are having this amazing discussion. So yes, here was a question, Fatma, where we end the note where we ended the first part, the first half of this podcast. Where it's like, what if someone doesn't share the same goals, the same goal of ultimate well-being, for example, or maximization of well-being? What
yeah.
if they don't? So my question to you is, what then? And are they wrong to not have this goal? Are they wrong, or are they bad for not having this goal?
Um, yeah, for instance, some people arbitrarily do something and they don't even know why they're doing it.
No, they actively have this goal that they actively reject this goal, for example, of maximization of well-being. Now you can argue, well, it goes evolutionary biology, survival and replications, at least for humans at this point, has come to the point where we need to be good to other people, not just by instinct, which we already are because of evolution, but also go a couple of steps ahead beyond our intuitions and actually become a good part of the society for the well-being of the society, in turn for the well-being for our own personal well-being. But what if someone doesn't share the goals? He doesn't even share the goals, then he doesn't value the natural
Yeah, there are some
laws.
people who might be misanthropic and they might think, well, human beings have been the cause of this beautiful planet being defaced and denatured, and we might lose the earth, and the beautiful earth with all its diversity will become a wasteland. So it's better to do away with mankind altogether. Some people might think that. And the
Yeah,
earth will
so
be a
yes,
beautiful oasis for all these other
other
species, and it will
animals,
care. Yeah.
species, and actually they won't be wrong, because if you take human beings out of the equation, I think the planet would do just fine, and probably a bit better for other species which are getting extinct. For example, the polar bears, because of global warming, the earth is literally shrinking beneath their four legs.
Well, farm animals will probably become
Oh
extinct.
yes, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
farm animals wouldn't go wouldn't suffer this, because we are the main reason for this massively
No, I mean, we
overgrowth of.
protect these animals because they don't they've become domesticated. So
Yeah.
like chickens won't survive. I
Oh
don't know
yes.
if you've
No,
ever been
chickens used to fly.
in
By
the
the way, it's chickens of today. The
yeah.
way we genetically modified them, they are pretty
No, I think
helpless.
chickens have been naturally like this. They were sort of woodland creatures
Hmm.
before.
Okay.
So they used to be ones. They did have small wings, but
Hmm.
yeah, human beings were
Well,
able
I
to
think
then
dodos were the same, but
um
it also depends on the predator and prey as well. I know, of course, even if human beings are not there, some zebras are going to be brutally murdered and eaten alive by hyenas, for example. Yes, it's going to be the case, but the majority of the animals will have lesser chances of going extinct as they have currently. Take the dodo bird, for example. They might not have gone extinct if it wasn't for human beings. And again, there could be something else,
yeah.
such an asteroid hitting the planet and then causing mass extinction. By the way, if that happens, I would really like to ask people who think of morality is objective: was it bad? Was it morally unjust or morally bad for the universe to throw an asteroid into planet Earth that caused this mass extinction? No, I would say no, it wasn't.
Well, those are random events. So
Exactly. And that is actually my point. These are random events. The universe doesn't have the set of values that you do as human beings.
the world will keep turning whatever
Yeah.
we do. Yeah.
Just like I think we have discussed this before, it's not like save planet Earth. Planet Earth's going to do just fine, even with global warming. Nothing's going to happen, even if it turned into something like Venus, where there's a catastrophic amount of global warming happening. It's still going to exist. It's going to do just fine. It depends on what you mean by
Yeah,
fine.
I mean,
It's
yeah, it
us
depends
who's
what you
gonna
mean by
suffer, not the
fine.
planet.
Yeah, it's us that's gonna suffer, but some people might do and actually think that if you take human beings out of the equation, the earth will be more of a beautiful garden. But then which of us will be there to think, oh, it's a beautiful garden? Are
Well,
there any animals that think, oh, this is a beautiful place? Do they think, do they have concepts of beauty?
not really. Maybe some other life being might evolve. But here's the thing, Fatma. Even if there's a tree falling in a jungle and there's no one there to hear it, does it mean it never made a sound?
Um, well, a sound is something that, you know, we hear, right?
Yeah. Yeah, actually, you're right. You know what? I'm going to refute myself over here by saying that, hey, after all, beauty is something that we value. And if we don't exist, those values of beauty and everything wouldn't exist either.
Yeah, it wouldn't
Uh,
really be there. I mean, are there going to be animals there that are oh, look how gorgeous this place is, and we're so much happier now that those humans are
hmm,
gone. And I mean, people just don't understand nature if they don't see those things. I think that it's, for instance, if you uh, 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 they people might go to a park and think, oh, look how beautiful nature is, but that's not nature. Out in nature, things are a lot more brutal, and
oh,
this, you know, uh, it's not going to be those beautiful plants with gorgeous flowers that are thriving.
hmm,
It's going to be all these weeds and very predatory plants, and
and animals.
um, yeah, and animals that take over. There's going to be uh, plants that take over the light at the top. They're going to form a canopy which blocks off the light, which
Of the
causes no other plants to grow at the bottom.
true.
So there won't be as much diversity without plants, without some of those trees being felled and some of those branches
Funnily
being
enough,
used for
uh,
firewood.
yes, a couple of points over there, Fatma. So the first point about the trees, I think I've heard this. It really happens. Like the longest of trees, they block all the sunlight, so there's not much biodiversity going on in the smaller plants or the plants which are not grown fully yet. And this is the reason, not the reason, but it's kind of like normalized in a way. We still have new plants because forest bushfires are not exactly
Yeah,
a
bushfires.
bad
Yeah,
thing for the ecosystem.
yeah,
They
that's right.
actually they
But
actually like
bushfires can
help.
happen naturally, you know, without human beings as well.
Yes,
You know, just
actually
with
yes. A- And the other point is like, and just like you see there, Fatma, we can reason with such people who think all human beings should be killed and dead. Well, what for? And what's the end goal here? If your end goal is, or the thing you value is the beauty of nature, nature striving and all, well, that value is going to vanish with you, with all the humans who have those values. So the point is like, you can reason, you can produce good reason, you can reason your way through. And funnily enough, do you know of any other animal who can reason? If you take one of the best ones, I
no,
think at a
there
basic
isn't.
level, yeah, at a basic level they can, but at a fundamental level, they can reason that, okay, I see predator. If I run, I not get eaten. If I don't run, I get eaten. So I'm gonna choose the first part, which is run. So not get eaten. At a basic
Yeah,
level, they can reason, right? And I think this reasoning, I think in humans has evolved from the basics of the basics. But when we talk about rationality, and the laws of logic and these things, they kind of exist, but again, I have my doubts because I've seen a lot of videos where you show a simple magic trick to a chimpanzee and they're like, what the fuck is happening? So they do understand that something out of the ordinary is happening there. The laws of logic, you have this thing and this thing can't just vanish, but it just did vanish. Well, it was a magic
yeah,
trick. They have the tendency to reason, but yeah, not at the level, at the certain level that we can. For example, we can awe at the beauty of things of the universe. I don't think animals can. Just like you said, beauty, the kind of things you find in paintings, in literature, in music.
yeah.
No other animal
Where
can.
we're able to find beauty in certain harmonies and symmetry and things like that. I don't think that's present as in as many species. It might be at a very basic level. For instance, there are some birds who will uh, use shiny tinsel colored, but it's more like put on more colors on your feathers, things like that, where you know
Yeah.
the, their males tend to be the ones who are there's some birds where the males go and try to create a really gaudy looking
Mm.
nest, and
Yes.
they might collect bits of red felt and some bits of tin foil that are sparkly and things like that, and put it around their nest. And the more it sparkles and the more colorful it is, the mate will look at it and think, "Oh, that's a really gaudy looking," um,
Does she
you know.
think that it's a gaudy looking? Does she think it's the safer, it's a safer nest than the bird Rick over there? Like the bird John has a safer nest for my offsprings, and the red thing, is that
I think
edible?
it's
Like
no. I think the way they see it is kind of like how human beings,
see
like for
beauties.
instance, a woman will look at a guy with a Maserati, and
Oh
it's not
yes,
necessarily the car itself that she's attracted to so
social
much as
status is, yeah,
his ability to get the car. It's more like this guy is able to afford a luxury
yeah.
item, and therefore he is going to be able to uh protect me in a with money and security and so on. And it's the same way I think that bird the lady bird thinks, well, this bird is able to go and get all of these different colors from far off and away,
This is an
and
able bird, like
this is an
can
able bird
go
who's
here and
really
there. So my
exactly.
offsprings
And
are going to be abled as well because of this bird's genes. Yeah.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow. You explained it in a very brilliant way. I never thought of it like this before. However, it was another question again by uh, Hamza Qureshi. Well, do you think the number two exists in reality? Or is it just a form of a language thing or a label thing that we just invented?
The number two, whether it's oh yeah, that's I
You saw it, right?
the yeah, I mean, no, I didn't see
Oh,
your thread,
yeah.
but I heard this argument before. Does numbers exist at all? Because or it's a number because it's kind of like does if a tree falls, um,
In a way,
do
yes, but the way Hamza Qureshi did, and I argued, is like, dude, numbers are labels that we invented, but they represent real quantifiable things. For example, even if there are no humans to invent the number system, two stars are always going to be 1 plus 1 stars, right?
yeah.
In a non-languagey way, you don't even need language or symbols for that to be true. Numbers, on the other hand, yeah, of course. So three could be the number three in English language, but in another language, three could mean
Or in sign language, it's the same thing.
a wash basin or something. Like, hey, go wash
Yeah.
your hands in the three. I'm just giving you a very weird example. So, but it is kind
Yeah,
of true.
but
Which
there's a funny Blackadder sketch where there's a it's a sort of comedy in England, and there's Blackadder who's like a noble, and he's got his sort of servant who's always really dumb, and he says he's trying to teach him math, and he's saying, so these are two beans, one bean, and you put another bean to it, so 1 plus 1 equals so one bean, and you add another bean, how many beans do you get? And then the baldric always says, well, some beans.
he's
uh,
not wrong.
yeah. So
More beans. I think he's poor and he's hungry, so he just see, oh, more food. He's
Yeah.
not seeing the
So
logic behind
will
it.
it really be two, like 1 + 1 = 2, or will it in that other sort of
Mm.
like non-human, non-other language here, it might just be some planets, some stars.
Oh yeah, but depending on the perception of another conscious being, you see, and but what I'm saying is like 2 + 2 = 4 is a question of like in logic, it's kind of like identity. Like 2 + 2 is 4, and 4 is also equal to 4. Identity means one thing is always the thing that it is. It's not any other thing. 4 cannot be 5, for example. It's a law of logic, identity. And what I said, and maybe I was wrong to say this, that laws of physics that govern our universe, they are based on the law of identity, or they
Yeah, I
presume
guess
identity. Maybe I
if
think I,
if the word, it's like saying, the word gravity, if it wasn't present at all in any language, would it exist?
yes. I'd say the answer is yes, but I know what you're saying. Yeah. Uh,
Yeah.
and that was a kind of like the point I was making, especially about identity. And he just, I don't want to badmouth him or anything. Well, maybe he said something which
Oh,
went
we like
over
Hamza,
my,
come on.
yeah, which
You
went
know
over
that.
my head, and I'm a dumb dummy. That's why I can't understand where he's coming from. But yeah, who knows?
It's a good argument. It's a good argument, I
Oh,
would
it's
say.
an amazing argument. But what he
Yeah.
said, I kind of tend to agree with the other thing he said. But the issue was not about there not being like the problem with identity, like 1 + 1 is equals to 2, and we actually use it as quantify when we need to quantify real objects. The argument was of language. So language itself is man-made. But would you say that language is also subjective?
Is language subjective? Well, yeah, I guess it is subjective.
I would say it's not
Are you particular languages, like, or
like
languages?
it depends on what subjective means. Subjective means which is based on someone's opinion, and I don't think uh, language is based on someone's opinion, because if I say, can you get me a glass, if our baseline is this, using the same language and understanding of the same language, then if I say, if I say, hey, can you please bring me a glass of water, and someone brings me a glass of water, and the court of law, I was like, well, I said that, but I actually meant to get me food, for example, or turn on the light, because language is subjective, but
Well, it
it's
is,
not
yeah.
exactly subjective, if
Some ways, it is, and certain languages, like, because there's, for instance, light. If somebody says turn on the light, light has so many meanings. Like, it could be, turn on the knowledge or something. Turn on the spirituality. The light has so many connotations and uh, attachments to it. So does water. Water might mean life. And I guess
yeah.
English is a lot more specific, whereas there's like Arabic is not a very specific language.
Arabic is
Um,
not, and this is this kind of is
it's
infuriating for ex-Muslim atheists who were
it
bombarded
is,
by a
yeah.
Muslim. Oh, you didn't get
It's
you didn't get the context
context.
right.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
there's not much argument to be had against it. Well, we do find our ways,
Mm.
but they also have a good point. Well, yes, of course, it could be taken in some other way, and there are arguments against it. Well, why did God not make it crystal clear or something, which is a fine rebuttal. But yes, I actually agree. Language can be subjective, yes. But what about mathematics, like 3 and 4 and these things?
Mathematics, yeah, it's a lot. It's pretty much concrete. I think
It
mathematics.
is.
That's why they say that maths is the language of the universe.
Yes, but
because
mathematical representations, you can't say that they are objective. They are, at the end of the day, invented by the brain. But here's the funny thing. It's not necessarily the case that anything that you invented or anything which is based upon your own, like upon the humankind itself, has to be subjective. It could be symbolic as well, which represents the reality or the truth of our universe. It could be that. So I think 1 + 1 = 2 is not subjective. It's and the numbers themselves, the number one and the plus sign and two, 1 + 1 is equals equal sign. Even those are not actually subjective. They are symbolic, representing
yeah,
reality.
yeah, they're the closest to that you can get to reality. It's far more accurate than language, or spoken language, verbal language. It has mathematics is its own language, and the
Yes.
symbols might be different. For instance, in ancient India or somewhere, you could have had different symbols for a plus sign or a cosine or something. But the um, language itself, it's the same.
Yeah.
People will come to the same conclusions. They
Mathematics
mean the
itself, yeah.
same thing. Yeah.
Symbols, yeah, symbolic representation, the logical symbolic
It's
notations
There's no
are
room for
same.
interpretation, basically. That's
Yes.
the other thing, that
Yeah.
you might have a Bible or a Quran, and it's gonna have a whole room for interpret one line will have a room for interpretation for
Uh,
across cultures, across geography, across but you know there is no room for interpretation. If 1 + 1 will always be 2, whether
hmm.
you are in um, Japan, or whether it's your Baldric who's counting beans, or whether you're
Hmm.
a tribal person with a bone through your nose. It's
That's a very
you will
funny
st-
image, man. I
yeah.
shouldn't. Oh wow, I'm a bigot for saying that. No, it's a very nice image.
No, yeah, I mean, anyone,
Mhm.
wherever you are in the world, and whatever your denomination, you
Um,
1 + 1 will always be 2.
yes, I totally agree with that. I think on that note, let's end this discussion. And it has been amazing talking to you, especially now, because unlike in
Yeah,
one of
it's
our
it's been
last
on your mind because of Hamza's long thread with. It's now
uh,
going up to 200 comments.
uh no, I was just gonna be like, hey
The
man, just
epic
let's
thread.
agree to disagree, just agree to disagree.
We should just call Hamza to, because it would be. This is a fun topic. It's pretty much endless, and I'm not gonna. I mean, both of you are very, very intelligent, and both of you are bringing really uh, intelligent things to the table, and these are great rebuttals on both sides.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree. He's bringing
so
some
it would
amazing arguments.
it would be great to have Hamza on board on Zoom, and just I want to learn from both of you, because
Yeah.
I'm always learning. So yeah, it's great. Um, let's do this
Yes,
again.
let's do this, and let's actually talk to Hamza and bring him on the podcast and have a verbal discussion.
Yeah.
All good, Fatma. And as for all our viewers, well, we have started making these podcasts, and whoever wants to come and have a discussion with me or Fatma, you guys are more than welcome to do so. Just inbox myself or Fatma. And this message for all the people who are members of our group. And if you guys are not members of our group, this right here on the screen is the name of our group on Facebook. So if you're not already a member there, please join us. Thanks, Fatma. Thanks a lot. Thank you,
No,
everybody.
thank you. Had a great time.
I'll see you. Bye.
Okay, bye. Bye.